All right, off we go. Welcome to the GBNO show, the Get Better Not Older show, episode number 20. I am Dr. Rob Jones. This is my awesome wife, Shannon, the dietitian. Say hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
You fell for the joke. I love it. All right, so for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, between the two of us, because we are so mature, not old, mature, we have over 50 years of clinical experience between the two of us. Yours truly from the outside in, and Shannon from the
inside out.
So we are here to help you get better, not older, from the outside in and the inside out with tons of really good information. And today we're really going to be talking about something super important, which is exercise as you age. And Shannon came up with the title, which is basically, what's the title today, Shannon?
I didn't really come up with a title, but I just said our topic is the exercise regimen that you are doing proper for your age?
So really the main thing to remember about this is any type of exercise is good, okay? If you're moving, you're doing better, okay? If you want to die young, early, miserably, don't move. It's pretty simple, okay? It sounds dire, but it's pretty simple. If you move, you're going to feel better, but the glut of information out there in social media right now is probably immensely confusing to a lot of people. And so we're going to try and clear up some of that confusion today with how should I exercise? When should I exercise? What should I do for said exercise?
And specifically, what's important here is for your age, because I would say if you are going on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and just following whoever pops up on your screen, if you're not paying attention, some people may not know that the information that they're being given is not accurate. Mm-hmm. There 100% needs to be adjustments in your exercise choices and regimen as you age.
Right.
And
so
let's start with breaking down why. What variables are included in why we have to be, careful as to what we're doing as we age, because if you're doing it the wrong way, it can actually have some detriments.
100%.
And so it's hard enough for people to get the motivation to do it. We just want to make sure that our listeners understand that what you're seeing all over TikTok, et cetera, may not be exactly what you should be doing for your age.
And it's not just all over social media. I've spent my whole career, I'm in my 26th year of clinical practice, helping people get out of pain. And I will tell you, one of the most common things, and you know this because I've been lamenting this at our dinner talks for over 2 decades, actually a quarter century now. There is so much bad information in the exercise world, specifically with regard to the spine and shoulders, that people are actually going, okay, it's a new year, it's January, or I want to lose weight, or whatever it is that is motivating said person to get into exercise. They go to 1 or 2 classes and then they're broken. Okay, whether it's Pilates or CrossFit or yoga or a personal trainer. And I'm not trying to knock any one mode of fitness, because I want everybody to do everything. If you love Pilates, do Pilates. But you have to remember there's some kind of detrimental information out there. And if you don't understand how to do certain basic movements, then you're setting yourself up for some failure.
All right, so let's start with why is it that we do need to alter as we age? Let's talk a little bit about some of the reasons why it's important.
Okay. So can I jump on this because it's my world?
Sure.
Okay. So the human body is designed to work in a very specific way. So if you go from the ground up, when you start with the ankle is designed to be very mobile. So we go joint to joint on this analogy here. The ankle is designed to be very mobile, okay? The knee is designed to be stable. We don't want it to kind of waver around. We just want it to hinge. Then the hip is a ball and socket joint. It's designed to be very mobile. So those 3 things, ankle mobile, knee stable, hip mobile. If we exercise in a way that keep those on pattern, you're not going to break down. Then we move up to the lower back. The lower back is designed to be stable and not move very much while the hip is creating movement. So if you look at a squat, you want to be upright, chest up with good core pressure and just moving through your hips, ankles, and knees. When you start to move the spine forward and backward during a squat, guess what? That's when it breaks down. Then we move up to the middle back. The middle back is not designed to be all bent over and stiff like it is with computer.
I just said it.
Yeah, everybody does when I do that, or when I say that. Okay, then your shoulder blades are designed to be stable while they hold the platform for your mobile shoulders to move around. Now, taking that into account, there's not a lot of understanding with that with a lot of modalities of exercise, specifically core training. And I've been beating this drum for years and years. I started writing my book, Protect Your Back 101, in 2015. Oh, we have it there, presented. Lovely. It was published in 2018, and the gist of the book is it's a self-help manual to get you through. If you hurt your back in this way, do this stuff. If you hurt your back in this way, do that stuff. But the book was really written as impetus because I saw so many patients breaking down their backs, because what's the first thing people want to do when they go to the gym? They want to lose blubber or waist fat, right? So what do? They think they're going to spot reduce. So they go to the gym and then they lay down on their back and they do what they did in the 8th grade gym class, or when they were running track in 7th grade or 9th grade or whatever, and they do sit-ups and crunches because they think that's going to roast their belly fat. Well, it's a myth, okay? Yeah. That does not happen.
Actually, I just saw another study yesterday that said it's spot reduction does not exist.
And it doesn't need to be studied anymore. We know it, okay? Yeah. But people are going, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get on an ab machine and roast my love handles. Well, it doesn't work that way. And then guess what? Remember me saying about the spine should be in a nice stable position? Well, then they're moving their spine through a range of motion and then they break their spine down. So that's my soapbox about that. So when you start your training, you have to look at how the body is designed to move, okay? That's number one. Number two is, as we get over 40, we start to lose muscle mass with what's called age-related sarcopenia. So it actually starts in your 30s, but it can be as high as 8 to 9% per decade, which is a lot. But here's the cool thing. There's studies that show people in their 60s that are dosing themselves the right way with exercise and eating properly can build muscle just as well as people 20 years they're younger.
I have studies that are cited today that'll be in our show notes that relate to that for sure.
Another situation is we've had really bad information coming out of the basic medical model where you've had family physicians telling people to not squat and deadlift because they're going to hurt their back. Now, am I encouraging people who've never touched a weight before to go to the gym and get under a squat bar and max out the weight? No, but I've got patients that come to me with lower back problems and they're in their 70s. And one of the first things I do when I get them out of pain with various core exercise is teach them how to squat. Because if you can't get out of a chair, out of your car, or off a toilet as you age, guess where you're going? You're going to a retirement center. Okay. Squatting isn't just about putting weight on your back and grinding yourself, down and up. It's about getting your body weight off of a seated position to a standing position repeatedly so you can do that functionally without hurting yourself.
Okay, so let's go over a few of the key reasons why we have to adjust after 40, in addition to everything that you just said. One being our metabolism slows.
Right.
1 to 2% per decade.
Okay.
Why is that?
Why do we?
I'm testing you here.
Okay, well, let me see if I can pass it.
Okay.
Because of the age-related sarcopenia, in a lot of cases when people don't exercise, you actually get fatty infiltration in the musculature. There's MRIs that show cross-sections of a thigh in a healthy 60-year-old who weight trains, and it's just like you're looking at a steak. They've just got thick, nice red muscle. And then somebody who doesn't exercise, and you've got, were you going to say something?
Yeah, like exercise or strength train?
Both.
Okay.
Okay, because you need a good cardiovascular system too. But then you take the person who doesn't do any exercise and they've just been eating and sitting around, and you look at that same cross-section in this different person, and it's like 20% fat 20% muscle, 80% fat. Like, it's astounding.
It's a ribeye.
It's a ribeye. Yeah, it's riddled with fat. Now, we've known in my world, in the chiro low back world, that if you have a chronic lower back problem, when they MRI the lower back muscles, you get fatty infiltration out of the deep stabilizing muscles that are right beside the joints. So instead of those muscles being nice and red like a steak, they're riddled with fat. And if you have more fat in the muscle than muscle mass, that muscle is less like an engine that's revving. So your metabolic rate for that area is going to go down.
You passed, Dr. Jones.
Ding.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so what we have to do as we age is we have to load bear weight training. Were you going to ask me something else? Because
we're going to keep going through these points.
I don't want to go. I just want to keep talking.
Well, it doesn't matter what you want sometimes, because sometimes
or
I
all
have
the time?
to take over.
She does.
So metabolism decreases 1 to 2%. Okay, you just explained why that is. So we have to adjust accordingly. Everybody in my realm complains, I've gained about 5 to 10 pounds a year. Don't really know how.
That is wild.
Guess what? If you're losing muscle mass and your metabolism's going down, yet you're doing the same things, that is why.
Yeah.
You already mentioned sarcopenia. So we have to strength train to keep our muscle mass up.
Right.
Joint health and recovery takes longer after 40. Therefore, we have to adapt, and we're going to get into what that actually looks like. And then probably more in my realm, maybe more so than yours, are the hormonal shifts that are happening, because I see a lot of perimenopausal and menopausal women who say, I have been doing the exact same thing I've always done, yet I cannot lose weight. Doesn't matter how many calories I'm eating, what I'm doing in the gym, I am not losing weight. And this has to do with those hormonal changes and how you need to change the way you're exercising so that you are not making it more of an issue and actually adapting to that change in life.
Can we give an example of what you're talking about? Remember the whole Orange Theory thing? And again, not trying to throw Orange Theory under the bus, but if you are perimenopausal means what?
Before your change in life, you still, your hormones are in that transitional phase.
Okay, but you're fluxing basically.
Yeah,
okay.
It's definitely a change, but you're not completely menopausal.
So women and men who are basically getting a little bit older, it's really important to control cortisol, which is our stress hormone. You need some cortisol because it spikes in the morning to get you going and get you out of bed. But if
helps you get away from a snake.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like when you were yelling at me the other day when there was a cockroach. Rob, get here now.
It wasn't quick enough.
Yeah, I should have sprinted to you, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Anyways, so the whole thing with cortisol is you need it, okay? But you have to control it because it will blunt the good hormones that you and I both need. And certain types of exercise, specifically for women at a certain age, will spike cortisol. So why don't you jump into that example?
So this is an example of when you are in that hormonal shift, or when things are shifting as far as your joints aren't quite the way they used to be. They're getting more and more taxed. We're getting older. However, if you are doing the wrong type of exercise, so for instance, I did Orange Theory for 2 years. It's legit a very difficult, very taxing workout. And I kept wondering why I was not getting, for as much as I still stayed extremely active, and as hard as those workouts were, why was I not seeing the changes on the scale? Or actually, I was getting worse. I started getting adiposity, meaning fat in my midsection, which is very common for women as we lose our hormones and get older. What was happening is I was putting so much stress on my body that it perceived me as being, my cortisol was so high, it perceived me as being in danger.
Yeah.
And it actually caused hormonal problems, which caused me to deposit fat instead of burn fat. So that's really kind of the premise of why we're doing this, is because as we age, we have to realize that you also have to adapt your exercise. CrossFit, the same. There's so much data right now on the fact that I mean, honestly, even Mark Sisson talks about this because he used to be a marathon runner. Well, guess what? He's now transitioned into a huge walker because the data shows that when we're running or when we're doing those taxing, very difficult for sustained periods of time,
Right.
your body perceives that as I'm running away from a lion that is getting ready to kill me, and it blunts your ability to burn fat during that time, and because you're in that flight or fright.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
You
I always
did.
get that
You
backwards.
reversed it, but you said
Okay.
it right. But also, the reason you're adding that adiposity is your body is kicking up the cortisol and saying, we better store some energy because I don't know when this
Lion is gonna stop
coming
running.
back.
Yeah.
So your brain is depositing that fat going, we need these reserves just in case we need that extra fuel for later. So again, CrossFit, Orange Theory, not bad. Good stuff. I did a couple of the workouts because you wanted me to come and see how it was and assess for some issues you were having injury-wise. It was a great workout, but it's intense. It is high-intensity interval training, but not for a short period of time, which we're going to talk about. It was for
Sustained.
It was for an hour straight.
Yeah.
So it was really intense. So that's, again, what we're talking about. So we're going to try and clear up some of the gray area of, okay, what should I do, basically?
Okay, I'm going to now quote a stat here, but I got to put on my glasses. That was not good.
Age-related changes.
Yeah. A 2022 meta-analysis in sports medicine showed that strength training twice a week in adults over 40 reduced all-cause mortality by 21%.
And there's studies out there that show over 30%. So that's just one of a gazillion studies that show this.
Now we're going to get into why is it that strength training is such an important part of, as we're aging, why is it so important to put muscle on and keep muscle on?
Okay, my turn.
Sure.
Am I allowed to talk?
Take it over now.
Okay. He wouldn't mind me telling the story. I'm not going to give his full name, but my friend Bill at the gym, who you've met, he's hilarious. We clown around all the time. He's 81 years old, I believe. I've known him for 3 years. And it's his social time to go into the gym, but he works out. And we didn't see him for 3 or 4 months. You remember we ran into him 2 Saturdays ago. And I was like, where have you been? And he said, well, I almost died. He ended up having some weird genetic heart condition.
He has congestive heart failure.
Okay, but it put him into the hospital on and off for 3 months.
Yeah.
And he was pretty thin. I said, so what are you weighing now? And he said, I'm about 140 pounds. And I said, what did you go in at? And he said 175. And he was pretty lean, fairly muscular for an 80-year-old guy. And I said to him, and this goes to a lot of the stuff Gabriella Lyon talks about with muscle-centric medicine, and what I've been telling my patients forever is, imagine had he gone into the hospital at 140 pounds, not 175 pounds. He lost 35 pounds and he's building it back now. But if he had gone in at 140 pounds and he was down to 105 pounds, at that point, you're a bag of bones. Your
You have
bones,
no reserves.
your bones and organs, basically.
Yeah.
So there's data that shows the more muscle you have, the better you're going to do with falls, the better you're going to do post-operatively from certain type of orthopedic surgeries, post-operatively from cancer surgeries, from chemotherapy, all of the above.
Or just, like we're going to talk a lot about staying mobile and the importance of stretching and all of that. You have to start thinking that as we age, it's all about taking care of your body in a way that's protecting those foundational things.
Yeah.
You already mentioned being able to squat because you've got to get up and, if you fall on the floor, you got to be able to get up.
Yeah.
Fall risk. If you're not mobile, one of the first things that you start to see before there is a fall where potentially somebody breaks their hip is they start to shuffle because they change their gait and they start to shuffle. And then the next thing you know, they've fallen and they've broken their hip and then they go in the hospital and they get pneumonia. And then we're at a complete different state in them being able to care for themselves anymore.
So Peter Attia on a recent podcast, I don't remember the exact numbers, but he went through the ages of each decade, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and it was deaths caused by falls per 100,000 people per decade.
Okay.
So per 100,000 people, in their 30s, like 3 people died from falls. And those are going to be catastrophic, falling off a cliff kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
In the 40s, so in the 30s, it was like 3.5. In the 40s, it was what you would think, 4.2. In the 50s, it was 5.5. And all the way up into the 60s, it wasn't very much. Then you got 70s and 80s. 70s, it went up to a couple hundred. 80s, it went up to like 550. So like exponential amount. And that's only because of age-related weakness.
I just think that what happens is, one, people don't know the proper way to move and work foundationally, which I think you're really good at showing that. Then what happens is they get injured trying to do it, and then they stop doing it. And then that injury is still there. Like they change the way they're moving because they're injured. And like this weekend, I had a situation where I could barely walk because I had impinged my hip. Is that correct? Is that what I did?
Yeah.
That was good. And so I could barely walk. And so then I'm thinking, we at least knew what to do to get me out of that situation, and then knew how to rehab me so that I could get over that. But my gait changed because of that. And then even yesterday, I went to your office and said, I'm still walking funny. I can feel it. And it's putting some pressure on my back. And now my back's starting to hurt. And I feel like people just go, oh, no big deal. And then they keep going. And then they don't address that, and then get into the next thing and the next thing. And then before you know it, you're in your 60s and 70s, 80s, you can barely move because you've never properly addressed. The point is, you have to stay in good shape. You have to be able to, if you're exercising, do it in a way that you're not going to injure so that you can continue it. That continuity is really important.
Yeah, so that's all fine and good until somebody hurts themselves and then doesn't know what to do about it. So that's why it's super important to have somebody like me in your life. Okay, find yourself wherever you are regionally, find yourself a really good PT or a really good chiro who understands movement, not somebody who's just going to rub you and say, come back in a week for your 30th treatment.
That's nice, but we better partner that with something else.
Okay, listen, I do something called active release. I do adjustments when they're necessary, but my biggest thing is every patient that comes into my office gets some form of movement medicine. Okay, whether it's 1 or 2 exercises or they're on a plan with me where I've written something for them. But you have to mitigate the injury that you have. Unfortunately, we're living in a world where people think, oh, I've just injured my knee. It's over now. Now my knee's just bad. I've got a bad knee. I don't buy that because I've got, if you look at my knees, I've got arthritis behind both kneecaps, but you see me play tennis and squat and get on the ground. And if you look at my Instagram, I'm as flexible now, if not more than I was 10 years ago, because I don't allow myself to succumb to what my joints tell me. If I don't care what your doctor tells you, and again, this is not supposed to be medical advice, but seek out somebody like me. If you get a diagnosis of, oh, you have arthritis in your knee, I want you to walk out of that doctor's office and say, thank you, and then go find somebody who understands movement, how the body works. Because more often than not, if you have a little arthritis in some place in your body, if you manage the musculature and the stability around that joint, you're not even going to notice there's arthritis there. We've got into this weird model where, oh, you're married to this diagnosis. And we did a podcast on this.
Yeah.
Now, if you're at the point where your ball and socket, your hip is completely gone and there's bone spurs everywhere and you can't even see the joint, then you probably need a hip replacement. But I'm telling you right now, after a hip replacement, if you do the right things, you can be back to doing everything you did before. The technology is very good.
Okay, so now let's focus in on what would that ideal weekly plan look like.
Okay, so here's, again, not
May
trying.
I finish?
Absolutely not, because I'm more important.
That's what I thought.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry
we're
to
going
interrupt.
to give this information because this is based on over 15 studies reviewed in 2023 from journals like The Lancet, the Journal of Aging and Physical Activities. There are a lot of studies that are making these recommendations as we age. This has been studied as to why we are recommending this. The first thing is the strength training.
Yeah.
So let's go through each of these and talk about, that means you got to be on the right page, Dr. Jones.
I've already studied it and I have it memorized.
I don't think that's the truth.
Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome. So We're going to start with strength training.
Yes.
And why is that? We've already talked really a lot about this, but let's talk specifics now. Like, what are the basics? If somebody's going to do this, how many times a week, and what are the basics that they should be getting down?
So the minimum you should be doing on strength training is 2 to 3 times a week. I believe you should be doing more, like 4 times a week. That's why I'm not trying to shameless plug here, but the GBNO protocol, which I wrote, is over, I think it's over 12 weeks, but it's 3 to 4 days every week, and it's progressive. And the way I wrote it was, you have a day where you do a little bit of lower body, a little bit of upper body. And then the next day you do a little bit of lower body, a little bit of upper body in different areas. So you're splitting it up. I don't like to do all of legs in one day because it's just too much. You're too tired the next day. You can't function very well if the intensity is enough. And that's another thing, is studies show that if your intensity is good enough at our age, in our 50s or even in your 60s and 70s, you can still build as much muscle as people a couple of decades beneath you, age-wise. What does intensity mean? It means that the weight is challenging enough where on your last 3 to 4 reps, without losing perfect form, it's very challenging. Like, you can't wait to be done the set because you're going, oh, this is hard.
And I think that's something important that we're going to double click on there is the form. Mm-hmm. Like, if you are tiring in such a way that your form is broken down,
you're done.
You just need to know when to stop.
Yeah. So there's something called a rest pause set that I do with people that I train. I do myself. Let's say the program calls for 12 reps of something and you do 8 and you're gassed and you can't go on. Set the weight down, count to 8 to 10, finish your last 4. That way you're still in a bit of a fatigue state, so the intensity stays high, but your form doesn't break down. So to answer the question, minimum 2 to 3 days a week. I think ideally more 3 to 4 days a week.
I think people could work up to that. Again, we have to talk. It's always so important to remind everybody that you've got to do what's realistic, what's sustainable. Mm-hmm. So if you are not doing it at all right now, and then you jump into this lofty goal of doing it 3 to 4 times a week,
good point, yeah,
it's not going to be reality. So start with the goal of at least no less than 2 times a week. Mm-hmm. And then I think what you're saying is ideally you would work up to that it's part of 3 to 4 days.
So if you are going to do it 2 to 3 days a week, or just even 2, you want to do what we call multi-joint movements, okay? Stand up, sit down from a bench, that's a squat, maybe hold some weight, okay? Trying to do a deadlift, like a sumo deadlift. It's all over my Instagram, where you have a wider stance, picking up a kettlebell from the ground, which would mimic picking up a baby from the ground. Sitting down and pressing weight overhead like a shoulder press. Sitting down and doing a lat row. So you're doing multi-joint movements, mean a movement where you're using multiple joints. So if you're thinking, I'm going to go to the gym and just do bicep curls, well, that's a unilateral or bilateral single joint movement. It's not a bad movement, but it's not a multi-joint movement. It's not going to stimulate the whole body response like a multi-joint movement would. So
2 things I'm going to give as, and this will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. Currently on our GBNO community, you are training me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I have learned through this experience is that I'm really sore the next day, but also that when I feel like normally I would stop, you drop the weight and make me finish the set while monitoring my form. So there are examples of that in our community. We post weekly. And then the other thing too is on our website, Hey Dr. Rob, there's all these strength training programs that people can follow so that everything that you're mentioning here, you actually guide them through and tell them exactly how to do it.
100%. It's all video based. I'm there explaining how it's done, and you just follow it's plug and play, basically. You just follow along. You can do it with bands, you can do it with weights. If you don't have a gym, we have stuff to do at home. And
I know in my mind, I get overwhelmed, like I need it to see it written down.
It is.
And then the cool thing about your videos is that you give everybody those hints of, okay, pack your neck, put your shoulder back,
tighten the
core, all of the things that you should be thinking about before you start that particular exercise.
Right.
And it's nice in the video that you can sit there and rewind it and watch it because, it takes a while to think of all the things.
So can I mention one more thing specifically for women? Because of age-related bone loss, osteopenia, which leads to osteoporosis, which is bone loss. Men get it too. My grandfather had it, ironically, before he passed, which is very strange. It's just he stopped moving later in life. But women get it more than men because of hormonal changes. The main thing to remember, there's something called Wolff's Law, and Wolff's Law dictates that bone responds in accordance to the stresses placed upon it. Okay? So if you are diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, your best thing is to do load-bearing activities. Okay? So you need to hold a weight and do some squatting. Jump training is actually something that needs to be done as well. So some jumping jacks, some skipping rope, that sort of thing, okay?
We're going to get to that.
Starting slow, of course, but again, these are things that we have to do as humans, okay? So back to the weightlifting. Starting a couple days a week, okay? And again, we have programs at heydrrob.com, and we have the community programs that people can follow. And then once you get a little bit better and you feel like you're gleaning the benefit and you're making time, then yeah, you can up it 3-4 days a week. And basically it's all spelled out for you there.
And then here's that study that I was referring to earlier in 2023 in Frontiers in Physiology. The quote is, older adults gain similar strength benefits as younger adults when training intensity is moderate and consistent.
Wow, where did we hear that before?
So consistent to me.
Is it weird that you're married to somebody so smart?
I just can't believe it every day. It's unbelievable.
I'm sorry. I just have to.
Okay, moving on. So strength training is our number one.
Yes.
Okay. Then let's move into cardio because here is where I feel like I know as a woman, that's all we think about. A workout is cardio, cardio, cardio.
Yeah.
We're afraid we're going to get bulky if we go to the gym and we strength train and we don't want to look like you.
Yeah. So can I dispel that myth right away? Because
I think you've done it pretty well on all of our stuff.
I need to say it again because...
Of course you do.
Because I've got a couple women that I actually train because I do train some people. And one of them will always say to me when she knows it's not going to happen, we'll do an exercise and she's like, I'm not going to get bulky from this, right? And I always go, oh my gosh, unless you're on steroids, you're not going to get bulky from this, okay? But it's a myth.
It's a myth.
It's a myth.
And also, I think women don't like to be in a gym where there's a bunch of grunting, sweaty men all around. And I mean, I just think in general,
I don't want to be around sweaty men either. So I get that. I get that.
Going to the gym, but it doesn't have to be in a gym. You can have some weights at home, some kettlebells at home, some 100%. Bands at home.
But you're not going to get bulky by lifting.
You're not.
What's going to happen is you're going to burn some calories, you're going to burn a little fat, and then guess what? You're going to have more muscle mass, which is going to rev your engine at rest. So then guess what? You're going to burn fat at rest. So you're actually going to get leaner and you're going to feel better.
I always say it's the metabolic Spanx, meaning muscle helps us hold everything in, and it's also a metabolic sponge. So the more muscle you have, the more that you store the sugar that you're eating, the carbs that you're eating in your muscle. Mm-hmm. And that is very important as we age. As we're trying to keep our weight down and midsection, adiposity, fat, controlling our blood sugar is very important. The more muscle we have, the better control we have of that. 100%. So with cardio, Zone 2 training is really for our age. This is 40 plus is really an important one. And quite frankly, the statistics and the studies are not great for exercise for weight loss. That's going to be disappointing to a lot of people, but it's great for disease reduction, but exercise is not great for actual weight loss. And I think that's shocking to a lot of people, but you have to understand metabolically what your body does when you exercise It's all about survival. So if you're out running for 45 minutes or you're on a treadmill for 45 minutes running, again, let's go back to these primal needs. Your body perceives that as you are running from something that is chasing you and you're in danger. So you are going to actually lower your metabolic rate during that time to conserve.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know happens when you increase cardio like that is that your appetite really increases.
Right, because you're burning calories when you're doing cardio, you're not really burning fat.
And it's super easy to eat those 300, 400 calories.
So you spend an hour on the treadmill with moderate to low intensity, just an easy jog, you're burning 350 calories. And you're like, oh, I'm hungry. And you go home and eat 2 slices of pizza and now you've consumed 500 calories.
Exactly.
I don't know if you know this, but maybe people can Google this to substantiate, but I remember hearing in a seminar years and years ago, and I'm not an archaeologist, but I believe the guy because I trust him. He's a great researcher.
We're talking archaeology now?
No. He said that there's nowhere in archaeological literature that shows humans jogging. Other than the Tarahumara natives down in Mexico, they were the ones that the book Born to Run was written about. But it's just part of their religious passage. They run a lot. But nowhere in history did ancient man and women jog because it was a waste of energy. They ran away or towards stuff that they were going to...
something that danger.
Yeah, so they're running towards animals that they were trying to kill, running away from animals that were trying to kill them, or walking.
Yeah.
And walking...
We're out foraging, right? So you're out hunting, we were made to be that way. We 100%. Are, so we're gathering, we're hunting, and so that level 2 is the type of cardio where...
Zone 2.
Zone 2,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
where your heart rate is up, but you could still carry on a conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's really what's most important at our age as we're aging, is getting that level 2. And the zone 2 is actually fat burning. Mm-hmm. So that is good. So if you turn that into a run, that's not going to be fat burning. But if you're walking, that is fat burning. So that's good.
So now we do need to do some cardiovascular because you need elasticity. Cardiovascular means just that. Your cardio means, makes relation to your heart, and your vasculature is your veins and arteries. We want those elastic. We don't want those hard, okay? So you do need to do some cardio. So a couple of times a week with your heart rate elevated, where you're huffing and puffing and you can't hold a conversation. We do need to do that a couple of days a week.
It's like sudden spurt type exercise.
Yes.
And they do recommend that a couple of times a week. Mm-hmm. But they're very short amount of times.
Yes.
I mean, you want to present Tabatas?
Yeah. So really what we try to do ourselves and what we try to talk to patients about is more Tabata or HIIT interval type training, okay? Shorter periods, okay? So again, zone 2 is going out for a 20 or 30 minute walk, specifically after dinner. You're going to burn fat. It's going to lower your insulin levels. It's important. Go for a walk when you wake up. Walking for zone 2, being able to hold a conversation, but your heart rate's elevated. HIIT training or high intensity interval training is just designed for short bursts. I personally like to do Tabatas. I believe he's a Japanese researcher, where you go 4 minutes nonstop. It's 20 seconds on, really intense, 10 seconds rest, where you're just moving. So I do it on a bike, basically. So
and you could Google these. They're so easy to find, but it's Tabata.
Yeah, it's very simple. And I've got a Tabata timer on my phone. It'll go ding, 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 and it'll show 20 seconds. So if I'm on an exercise bike or on my road bike, I sprint as hard as I can for 20 seconds, then it goes ding, 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 and then it goes 10 seconds, and that's my rest interval. I'm not stopping, but I'm just kind of going moderate rate, and then I go, oh crap, I got to go again, 20 seconds, ding, 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 and I go as hard as I can. And I feel like I'm going to die by the 4th minute, but then it's over. And then depending on how good I feel that day, I try to do 2 rounds of it.
Do you know that they say, I mean, it's in the literature, that that's like that right there, just the however many, 4 minutes you said, is better than like 30 minutes of aerobic class or whatever.
Yeah, so there's a researcher, and we got to wrap it up here because we could talk for hours about this, but there's a researcher up in Canada, and he measured a constituent of metabolism. I think it was called citrate synthase, it's a constituent of when we burn energy basically in the cell. And he wrote a book called The 1 Minute Workout. And what it was he took a group of people who he put them on an exercise bike for 20 minutes at moderate pace, just trudging along somewhere over zone 2. And then he took people over a 10-minute period. They did a 2-minute warm up, 2-minute cool down. So there's your 4 minutes. And then in 6 minutes, they went 20 seconds for, it would be 20 seconds 3 times as hard as they could. And then the remaining, would that be 5? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the remaining 5 minutes were just 1 minute of steady state cardio again. Those people who just did the 3 bursts of all intense balls to the wall workout over 1 minute, which was broken up into 20 seconds, they burned like 80% more citrate synthase. So it just goes to show the intervals did a lot more metabolically than the steady state did. Now, the cool thing about HIIT training is you crank up your metabolism for as long as 36 hours after the event. So again, you're burning calories at rest. You're burning fat at rest without even doing anything.
So you couple that with strength training and then 4 minutes of those Tabatas. Now we need to talk about mobility and just recovery and flexibility as an important part, because I think it's like everybody gets done and then they just walk away and then they wonder why they can barely move the next day.
So this is my rule of thumb. What I've done with my programming is I've included prehab and mobility with my programs. If somebody goes into our heydrrob.com and buys the chest blaster or the chest workout, I always call it shoulder safe. Or if they buy the core workout, it's back safe core. What I do is I do mobilization and activation of said joint that we're going to work. So you're actually doing the stretching and the rehabbing before you even start. And then I always finish with 1 or 2 flexibility exercises at the end. So what I do myself.
Give an example of those flexibility.
Okay, so you see me do this, invariably I'm on my little mini roller before we go to bed every night, or I'm stretching something on the couch. Like today, I lifted yesterday. Later today, I'm going to play tennis with my buddy Ivan. Okay, so we go pretty hard. We sprint around a lot, which is great HIIT training, of course, because we're sprinting and then stopping. But before I go to bed tonight, I know I worked my shoulder, I know I worked my back, I know I worked my glutes, quads, and feet. So I'm going to stretch all that before I go to bed tonight. So I put on toe spacers, I roll with a tennis ball, I stretch my quads, my glutes, and then I do a little bit of back mobility. And that's it. So I spend 2 to 3 minutes before
So would
I go
you
to
say
bed.
the roller is a big part?
Yeah, so foam rolling before you go to bed, whatever you worked that day. If you did a chest workout, stretch your chest through your bathroom doorway before you go to bed. That sort of thing. It doesn't need to be an hour stretch every single night. What you worked that day, do a couple stretches before you go to bed. And I always say, roll and stretch before you go to bed. Because when you wake up feeling crappy in the morning, it's not, oh, I slept wrong. It's, oh, you didn't mitigate what you did the day before. You took it to bed with you. It snowballed in the form of stiffness. And then guess what? You woke up feeling like crap. So do what you worked that day, just 2 or 3 minutes before you go to bed. That will go a long way for your mobility
and then I
your
think
recovery.
We need to include balance and core as an important part. In the show notes, we will put an example of a typical week encompassing everything that we've talked about, what this looks like in a week for the 40 plus, a good little example of what they should be doing.
So here's what I do with my patients and myself. People don't think they're doing balance work, but when you do a hip airplane, guess what you're doing? You're mobilizing your hip. But I'm also cueing your foot to tripod the ground. Guess what that is? That's balance. Balance comes from the foot, the core, and the inner ear. People lose balance as they age because they don't work their core, they don't work their foot, and they wear those giant Hoka shoes because they've been told, sorry guys, if you're wearing Hokas in here.
Got to look around.
Good group in here. We're wearing sensible shoes, very smart. But people are wearing these big bouncy shoes because it feels good. Well, guess what? You're taking away your brain's connection to your foot and the ground. So you have no feeling. So guess what? Now you're
walking on clouds.
Yeah, now you're walking on clouds. You're walking like my friend Lisa said, it's like putting your foot in a shoebox or in a Kleenex box, right? and walking around like on a pad, which it feels good, but you're losing the sensation into the ground. We need that feedback. That's why walking barefoot, even if your feet are sore, walk barefoot. It's good for you. That will help with your balance. But again, this is all in the programming. So watch the workouts in the community that I do with Shannon, and I'm going to be doing some of them too, but we're doing flexibility, strength training, and balance and core training kind of all at the same time. So we're killing 6 birds with one stone, basically.
Okay, and we do need to wrap up.
Yeah.
But we can't not mention fuel and recovery. This is really just about making sure that you obviously are nourishing in a way and hydrating in a way so that you're fueling these workouts. And so we talk about protein first. And obviously, if we're trying to build muscle, you have to have protein. I will just say simply, women across the board should try to get 100 grams of protein a day. And the reason why I'm not going to give so many grams per kilogram or so many grams per item, because I have been working with women for so long, and if they can get to 100, I am impressed.
Okay.
So 30 per meal is really kind of what I know is realistic. And if you're not getting that, that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah. And if you're a guy, it's easier for guys, but let's say, you're 200 pounds or more like I am. Maybe I've got 10 pounds of fat on me. I don't know, but your ideal body weight should be your grams of protein per pound, basically.
And that's important to say ideal because,
body weight,
if you're carrying extra weight, you don't want to calculate it that way.
Yeah, so for me, I try to get, anywhere from 175 to 190 a day.
Yeah.
It's hard some days, but, you do your best.
Yeah, it sounds daunting.
It's not.
Yeah. However, as the size of a deck of cards of a piece of chicken is how many, Dr. Rob?
Always failed us. 7 grams.
Per ounce.
Per ounce.
And how many ounces do I say are a deck of cards, the size of a deck of cards?
4, right?
3. Are you kidding me?
I'm just not very smart.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the size of a deck of cards, let's just review this, Dr. Rob, is 3 ounces, and there's 7 grams of protein per ounce. So you probably are going to want to get at least 2 decks of cards if you're eyeing it, right? Or more if you're a man.
So confused. Just eat a lot of protein.
Okay. Thanks for confusing everybody. And then hydration for joint lubrication and just overall just getting...
For joint lubrication...
Oh my, we're getting into supplements?
Yeah, well, we're going to do a simple plug for Rho. Everybody should be taking this. Collagen peptides that are liposomal, absorb great, anti-inflammatory from Rho Nutrition, code Dr. Rob. I swear by these things. I don't work with any company unless I try it first. And my recovery has been 5-fold better since using these 2 products. But we don't eat enough collagen in our diet because we're not gnawing on bones. We're not gnawing on cartilage.
We're not sitting in the cave gnawing on our kill.
Yeah, exactly. So you need some extra collagen. This is a great way to do it. And then for energy, ketones are great. But again, balanced diet.
Well, and then sleep. I think we would be remiss because during sleep is when you're going to build the muscle.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting proper sleep, you've just done all of that for naught if you're not sleeping properly. So doing the strength training properly, getting the right type of sleep, and making sure you're getting enough protein and fluids is really important. And then the supplements that we do talk about quite a bit, you just mentioned some of them, but creatine, we did a podcast recently on the importance of supplements, and we included the creatine, the omega-3, and vitamin D, all very important. Okay, so Dr. Rob, this is the time where you get very sad, but we do have to land the plane.
I don't get to keep talking.
No. So I think...
Do you know she actually looks at me some nights and she goes, "You talk too much."
I do say
like,
that.
For real, she says that to me, and it hurts my feelings.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You and your feelings. Okay, so let's talk about our takeaways here, which a lot of times you repeat, so maybe look at the paper. But I think more than anything is making sure everybody understands that you've got to be knowledgeable as you age to ensure that the efforts that you're putting in are actually healthy and not to your detriment.
Yeah.
And that really consistency is really important. In other words, we will put an example of what a week looks like in our show notes. And if somebody's going from not moving at all and then sees that, it can be a little daunting. So I'm always about sustainability, being realistic, and saying, hey, listen, let's find a starting point. Just understand that eventually that's what that should look like. And I think if you can say to yourself, how many steps are you getting a day? Let's just see what your baseline is. If it's not around 8 to 10,000, then I think that's where you start. Then you get that down and say, okay, great, I need to start working on strength training. And then you go to the website and find all Dr. Rob's great information, and they start strength training. And then you start to think about balance, all of the stuff that you're giving them to work on, all in all, is going to prevent injuries as you age so that you can get better, not older.
Very nice wrap up.
Did you see how I did that?
That was great. And
Wow.
you didn't ramble.
I didn't ramble.
That was amazing. So the bottom line is this. Be the turtle.
Here he goes.
Yeah. Be the turtle, not the hare, right?
Are turtles consistent too? They're persistent and consistent.
Do you not know this story?
Okay, we're not going to go.
Do we need to have a bedtime story?
So that's it for podcast number 20. Thanks for joining us today.
For my awesome wife, Shannon, who's always putting me in my place.
I'm good at it.
I'm Dr. Rob Jones. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time. Remember, get better, not older.